We are well into the 2025 NFL free agency period. A lot has changed in regards to a lot of team needs, player fits, where they might be looking in the 2025 NFL draft. So we are going to be doing another mock draft here today, going through all 32 picks for all 32 teams who all still have their first round pick. So we're going to see how free agency changed the NFL draft, and we'll go ahead and dive right into it here. And I think it changes pretty significantly here at number one. We've been mocking Abdul Carter pretty consistently to the Titans, but they really didn't do anything in NFL free agency to add to the quarterback room. You only have Will Levis on this roster. You didn't add a Sam Darnold. You didn't go trade for Geno Smith. You didn't look to add one of those veteran quarterback options. And to me, that signals that they are going to be taking a quarterback first overall. And that's going to be Cam Ward out of Miami. Really has raving reviews across the league. To me, he's somebody that I don't think is a traditional number one overall pick when it comes to his talent level. He puts the ball in harm's way a little bit too often. I think he's reckless at times, but he's a gunslinger. He has a lot of arm talent. He's somebody who I do think has good leadership ability and is a clear step ahead of any of the other quarterbacks in this draft class. So the Titans get their signal caller, and I think Callahan has to take a quarterback here with the first pick. Not sure he's going to have a super long leash if he doesn't have a good season this year, so I think it makes sense to take potentially your franchise guy. At number two, I think the Browns could go in three main different directions. The first being taking a quarterback, taking Shedeur Sanders most likely. And, you have Kenny Pickett, who you traded for, but Pickett's not your long-term answer. Deshaun Watson has proven he's not the long-term answer in Cleveland as well. But, this is also a roster that has a lot of holes. You did get Myles Garrett back, which is huge. Maybe that means that Abdul Carter isn't as much of a priority, where I thought that was absolutely going to be where they went if they couldn't get Garrett back. You also have Travis Hunter, who could be, a corner and a wide receiver for them. To me, though, I just love the idea of pairing Myles Garrett and Abdul Carter together, especially in a division with Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, in a conference with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, all the really talented quarterbacks in the AFC. Getting Myles Garrett and Abdul Carter on the same side of the football would be really fun to watch for the Browns. So that's going to be where we go with them at number two. Then for the Giants, it feels like it's desperation point at this point for a quarterback. Tried to go get Matthew Stafford. They haven't been able to do that. They can't get Aaron Rodgers there as of now. Russell Wilson came in for a visit. Those are stopgap options at best. And I don't think Shedeur Sanders should be going this high personally, but I think the Giants are kind of pigeonholing themselves. Not for a lack of trying, but I do think they kind of have to take a quarterback here. And I'd be very curious to see what they do if Sanders goes off the board at number two. But for here, we are going to have them selecting Sanders at number three to potentially be their franchise guy and save Brian Daboll and Joe Shane's jobs. Moving to number four, the Patriots. I think this is ideal. They're just hoping that Sanders and Ward both go in the top four, because that means that they can stay at pick number four here and take whichever one is left between Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. Carter would add to the defense. In this situation, he's not available. Hunter could add to both the offense and the defense. You go ahead and go get a weapon for Drake May. I think Hunter can be kind of that wide receiver 3 slot role type of player that plays full-time on defense as well. And who knows, maybe he can earn full-time snaps on both sides of the football. I think he starts at corner, though, plays across from Christian Gonzalez, which forms a really nice young duo there, and then plays some on offense as well as a nice weapon for Drake May. Next up for the Jaguars, they could go in a ton of different directions here, but I think they want to get tougher up front, be able to kind of emulate what the Eagles did in the Super Bowl, being really good at the line of scrimmage. I'm going to go with Mason Graham here out of Michigan. He's somebody that, didn't have the best combine measurements. He has short arms, but when you turn on his tape, he is just relentless. He's a great run stuffer, has moves and counter moves to go to in the pass rushing game, has good explosiveness, strong strength as well. I think from a pure talent perspective, he is one of the best players in this class, and I don't think measurables drop him too far in a class that maybe doesn't have a ton of standout players. Moving to number 6, we have the Raiders on the clock. Pete Carroll, you trade for Geno Smith, you extend Max Crosby. They're trying to kind of get the identity of this team under control. And I think that one of the things that Pete Carroll loves to do is establish the running game, get really tough in the trenches. I could definitely see them taking a Will Campbell, an Armand Membu, but I am going to have them taking Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State. His contact balance, the ferociousness in which he runs with the football is just really dynamic. And I don't think that Sincere McCormick or any of the guys on this roster are preventing you from taking a potential superstar in Ashton Jeanty. Even if it may seem high for a running back, I don't think too many Raiders fans would be upset with that pick. Moving to number 7 for the New York Jets. I think one area that they did kind of lose big time in free agency was losing Morgan Moses, who is old, but he's been playing at a really high level the past couple of years, whether it was on the Ravens or the Jets. He's been a really solid right tackle, and I do think that leaves a hole for them on that right side. I don't think you're forcing a quarterback here. The wide receiver, who knows? McMillan could be in play, but I really do like selecting Armand Membu out of Missouri here. He played right tackle at Missouri. He's just a natural fit to slide into that spot. Elijah Vera Tucker can stay in at guard. Then I think you have a really good, solid offensive line with Tippmann, John Simpson, and Olu Fashanu on the left side. That's kind of a complete unit for Justin Fields to work with in his first year in a new system with the Jets. I think this gives you kind of the best chance to be successful, as one of Fields' biggest problems in Chicago was holding onto the football too long. Hopefully, by building out a really strong offensive line, you're able to mitigate some of the problems with that. At number 8 for the Panthers, I really liked what the Panthers did in free agency. You added Bobby Brown as a nose tackle, Wharton as well on the defensive side of the football. I think that they've kind of just filled needs really effectively kind of throughout all of free agency and allowed themselves to go get a playmaker if they want to, or just add another pass rusher, another guy that can get after the quarterback. And I think they're going to be really intrigued by Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M. Obviously, there's not a big-time production profile with Shamar Stewart, just 1.5 sacks in his 3 years of college, 1.5 each season, but he generated a lot of pressures, one of the best combine performances that we've seen for an edge rusher. He is an explosive, big, physical athlete, and if he can just finish the plays a little bit better, I think he could have potentially been a top 5 pick in this draft. It's going to come down to how comfortable teams are with his lack of production versus his measurables and his athleticism and his pressures. There's a lot to like in Stewart's game, but there's a lot of rawness and undeveloped traits as well. So I think the Panthers are taking a swing on this here, but I think Stewart could turn into a really, really good player for them. Up next at number 9 for the Saints, I think this team has a ton of issues kind of all across their roster, so they really should be going with kind of the best player available. You could add a wide receiver, you could add to the offensive line, definitely could add defense pretty much all over the place. I'm going to go with Will Campbell out of LSU. Keeping the Louisiana kid in New Orleans there, I really do like that fit. I think Campbell can absolutely have a chance to play tackle. Trevor Penning hasn't been great on that right side, but I also think that you have a lot of slots on the interior. Nick Saldivieri, Cesar Ruiz, I don't think has been great either, so you can plug him into either of the guard spots, I think, from day one, and then potentially kick him out to tackle if he can play there. I think that's just a big floor pick for the Saints that they desperately need. Next up for the Bears at number 10, I absolutely think that Ashton Jeanty would be in play if he is available, but in this scenario, the Raiders took him at number 6. I think you have to consider the defensive line. Yes, they did add Deo Odenigbo from the Colts, and he was signed to a decent deal, but him and Montez Sweat are really the only edge rushers on this team that you feel are established in any capacity. Austin Booker maybe as a developmental player who you drafted last year, but I do think that, when you look at a lot of their personnel decision makers, you've got Dennis Allen, who likes big physical defensive ends. I think Ryan Poles has also shown that he likes that build within a defensive end as well. So we are going to go with Mykel Williams out of Georgia, another guy who maybe didn't have ridiculous production, but he has really good traits. He ran pretty well at his pro day and I think showed off some athleticism. So Williams, I do think, dealt with a bunch of nagging injuries. I do think there is better days ahead for him in the NFL, and I think he is a very good kind of prototype and scheme fit for this Bears team who, don't have a ton of holes at this point. Moving to number 11 for the 49ers, they have kind of been moving on from a lot of their big key pieces to, their championship contending teams over the past few years. I'm going to add to the secondary. You have Charvarius Ward, who left in free agency. You don't have a ton on that back end, so we're going to go with Jahdae Barron out of Texas. He is somebody who has played safety. He's played slot corner. He's played outside corner. That's where he played this year. I think Barron provides a ton of versatility in the back end of that defense. I think that, that versatility can be really important for Robert Saleh and this new defense. So I think Barron is a very good fit at a big position of need. Then at number 12 for the Dallas Cowboys, we're going to go with Tetairoa McMillan out of Arizona. Pairing him and CeeDee Lamb together would be really fun. You have to get the most out of Dak Prescott because this running game I don't think is going to be fantastic. You could add to the offensive line, Zach Martin retiring. I think there are some holes on that area, and you can definitely add, a running back, certainly. I don't think you would take one if it's not Ashton Genty here at 12. Adding, to the edge room, who knows what's going to happen with Micah Parsons and his contract. DeMarcus Lawrence leaves in, quite a feud with Micah Parsons as well. So there's a lot of ways the Cowboys could go, but I'm going to go with McMillan here at number 12, adding another playmaker to this offense. Next up, we have the Dolphins at number 13. I've gone offensive line for them many times over, but I am actually going to go in a different direction and select Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan. Johnson was someone that was kind of seen as a consensus top 5 pick coming into this draft. He slid down the board a little bit due to injuries and a little bit of inconsistent play. Maybe potential concerns about his long speed. I really liked his tape. I think the Dolphins need to add to the cornerback position. You have Jalen Ramsey, Kidder Coe, who's decent in the slot, but you need another outside guy. Relying on Cam Smith or Storm Duck is probably not a great recipe for success. So we're going to add Will Johnson to the back end of that defense, which I think is a huge addition. Then at number 14, this is a pick that I made quite a few times a while ago, but he really hasn't been available for them for quite a while. But Tyler Warren in this draft slips a little bit, and the Colts take advantage, getting him over the middle of the field, whether it's Daniel Jones, who they just signed, throwing him the ball, or Anthony Richardson. Warren can be a guy you get the ball in his hands in creative ways and let him go after the catch. He's definitely a dangerous blocker. He is a really good, complete tight end prospect that I really do like, and I think the Colts would be ecstatic to get him at number 14. Moving to the Falcons at number 15, I'm going to go with a guy who has been kind of shooting up draft boards lately. That's Jahad Campbell out of Alabama. He's somebody that played predominantly off-ball linebacker at Alabama, and I think that's a position they could continue to add to. You have Caden Ellis and Divine Diablo, Trey Anderson, a couple guys in that area, but I definitely think you can improve over Anderson, Diablo. I think Campbell was the most talented player in that group, but he also played on the edge as well. He was recruited as an edge prospect. He was really effective, on blitzes, coming off the edge. I thought he showed a lot when it came to pass rushing prowess. This defense needs to get better at rushing the passer. You could certainly take a James Pierce Jr., Mike Green, a more traditional pass rusher, but I think Campbell is just a player that you can be really creative with, and Raheem Morris, adding him to his defense, I think he would really enjoy working with him. At number 16 for the Cardinals, I've made this selection quite a few times before, but I do just think it makes a ton of sense. Adding a player like Jalen Walker to this defense with Jonathan Gannon, you can use him, very similarly to Jahad Campbell, where he's really effective coming off the edge as a blitzer. He can be somebody that, blows up running backs that are trying to pass protect. He's a solid coverage player as well. He's somebody that did play off-ball linebacker as well. So just adding another front seven disruptor, I could definitely see the Cardinals being interested in there. Then at number 17 for the Bengals, we'll see what happens with Trey Hendrickson. As of when I'm recording this, they haven't signed him, but I do think they are going to end up getting him back. You have Miles Murphy, Joseph Osai, who you brought back in free agency, but I think you have to continue to get after the passer. And, I think they are going to prioritize that. I'm going to go with Mike Green out of Marshall. There are some off-the-field concerns there, but if that checks out, Mike Green is somebody who dominated his competition at Marshall, played really well in his big games against Virginia Tech and Ohio State. He had a ton of production, showed really good physicality in the running game, as well as being, a guy that can combine moves together really effectively in the pass rush game as well. So as long as the off-the-field concerns check out with Mike Green, I do think he will be, a top 20 selection and somebody that has a chance to be a really good player. Moving to number 18 for the Seattle Seahawks, they have to improve the interior of this offensive line. I'm going to go with Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. He has true 5-position versatility on the offensive line, but I think he's going to be best at guard or even potentially center. I think you can just kind of move him around and see where he fits best. The Seahawks may be bringing in another guard, but I think that doesn't really dissuade you from taking a player like Zabel, who I think provides just a higher floor player on the interior that they have been desperately missing. And, Sam Darnold signed there, so it'll be very interesting to see how he deals with an offensive line that isn't overly good. I think that's when he's at his worst. So I think the Seahawks are going to prioritize protecting him as much as humanly possible. Then at 19 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm going to go with Donovan Ezeruaku out of Boston College. Another guy who I think is shooting up draft boards, has really long arms, even though he's not the tallest edge rusher. He plays the run really effectively. He has a really nice combination of pass rush moves. Was very productive in college this year as well. He's somebody that I do think, when NFL teams look at the tape, maybe he doesn't have the ideal height or weight measurables, but he does all of the little things really effectively. And for the Buccaneers, who let Joe Tryon-Shoyinka walk to the Cleveland Browns, I think that makes sense to add Ezeruaku to that edge room there. Next up for the Broncos at number 20, I think they need to get an offensive weapon for Bo Nix. You have Courtland Sutton there, who's kind of your big contested catch wide receiver. I think you need to add another wide receiver to that room. You could go with Luther Burden, who'd be kind of more of a yak threat. I am going to go with Matthew Golden out of Texas. Ran incredibly well at the combine, was very quick. He's somebody who can take the top off of defense, runs really good routes. I think he's kind of that separator type that I think the Broncos are missing and would be really, really good for Bo Nix to kind of aid in his development, get him some easy completions over the middle of the field, quick routes. I think Golden could be somebody that the Broncos really do like. Then for the Steelers at number 21, they still don't have a quarterback on this roster. As of this recording, Aaron Rodgers rumored to potentially be interested in them. Russell Wilson, maybe they end up bringing him back. Those cannot be your long-term answers. If you're seriously, thinking about trying to make a playoff spot and compete for this division title, you cannot have Mason Rudolph as your only quarterback really on this roster. So I'm going to go ahead and have them take a swing on a quarterback. Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. He is supposedly getting a lot of love in the NFL, community here. I think teams do like him more than some people in the media, myself included. I think that, I have big time question marks as far as how that offense translates to the NFL. I especially think that if he's in this situation and there's no veteran quarterback besides Mason Rudolph, he's going to get into the game really early, and I think that could be a big time issue because I just don't think Dart proved that he could read NFL defenses, whether that was at the Senior Bowl or in college at Ole Miss. I was just not overly impressed in his game, but I do think there's a good chance he goes in the back end of round one here. The Steelers are a team that don't really have a quarterback answer right now, so it could certainly be to the Steelers at number 21. Next up, we have the Chargers at number 22. I think the interior of this defensive line absolutely needs some help. You have Tyler Tart, who was, a good pickup last year, but I don't think they have a ton on the interior. And Jim Harbaugh has a chance to go get one of his guys that he coached at Michigan that he was constantly praising in Kenneth Grant. I think that just makes so much sense. Of course, they could add a Marion Hampton to add to the running game. You could add Colston Loveland or a wide receiver, but I just don't think Harbaugh would be able to pass on Kenneth Grant to shore up that run defense on the interior. Next for the Packers, I'm going to go with Luther Burden out of Missouri. They really just didn't have a wide receiver last year that they could consistently rely on. Jaden Reed was solid, but I thought that, he was very kind of design touch dependent at times, and I don't think he was able to really turn into that true wide receiver one that they were hoping for. Wicks and some of the other guys on this team kind of regressed a little bit, so I think they're going to look to add to the wide receiver room to help get the most out of Jordan Love moving forward, and it's going to be Luther Burden, who shows a ton of yak ability. Did have a bit of a down year in 2024, but I think that was largely due to really poor quarterback play. So I have Burden here at number 23, and I think he would be a solid selection for them. Next up at number 24 for the Minnesota Vikings, you did let Bynum go in free agency, so I think the safety room is looking a little bit light. You could add to the other areas, but on the defensive side of the ball, you sign Jonathan Allen, you have Javon Hargrave. Not guys that are in the primes of their career, but big-time additions to the interior of this defensive line. You had Ryan Kelly and Will Fries on the interior of the offensive line. They have prioritized, adding to that area. So I think that they, do give themselves the flexibility to go get a guy like Malachi Starks. Brian Flores loves running these three safety defenses. Harrison Smith is not getting any younger as well. So you can have Metellus, Smith, and Malachi Starks now, and then, once you have Harrison Smith kind of move on due to age, I think you have another guy, Malachi Starks, who you could really rely on. He's very instinctual, did have a bit of a down year in 2024. I don't think he was being put in the best positions to succeed, but his 2023 tape, he looked really smooth, very instinctual, has good range. I think Starks, is somebody that could provide some really good value towards the back end of round 1 here. The Texans at number 25 kind of feel like they've pigeonholed themselves into taking offensive line. Wide receiver could be on the board, certainly, if they really like someone. Maybe Emeka Buka to repair him with CJ Stroud, but you've got to keep Stroud upright. And so we're going to go with Kelvin Banks out of Texas. He's somebody that I am a little bit lower on. If you want to hear why, check out my offensive tackle ranking video. But he's somebody that, I do think is still going to go round 1, but maybe a little bit later than people expect. I do think he has a little bit slow feet at times, but overall he's a big, powerful player. Whether he does end up landing at left tackle to replace Laramie Tunsil, who they traded to the Commanders, or kicking on the interior to replace Kenyon Green and some of the other holes they have on that offensive line, I think Banks could be a good fit to help keep Stroud upright. This is a fit that I do really like. The Rams at number 26. We've had them going offensive tackle many times, but I do think tight end is a big need for them as well. And Colston Loveland usually doesn't make it here, but I think he would be a really good fit in the Sean McVay offense. Somebody that can really consistently get open over the middle of the field for Matthew Stafford, create matchup nightmares. I think he could be really, really good in this offense. You get him, Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua. That could be a really nice receiving trio for Stafford and this offense. At number 27 for the Ravens, I'm going to go with Nick Eamon-Warry out of South Carolina. And he's somebody who is ranked a little bit lower, but he was a combine warrior. I do think he is a guy that, provides a lot of range in the back end of the defense. He can come up and hit like a linebacker at times. He's physical at the catch point, has some ball production. Pairing him and Kyle Hamilton together is kind of the ultimate versatility on the back end of that defense. You can just rotate both of them back and forth, have them both come downhill, play at the line of scrimmage. I think that would just allow, this defense to be incredibly creative and really allow them to do a ton of different disguises and coverages on the back end. So I think that would make sense for the Ravens at number 27. The Lions at number 28, we are going to go with Tyler Booker to replace Kevin Zeitler. I just think that makes a lot of sense, plugging him right in there. He's big, he's physical, he's nasty. He's kind of exactly what the Lions like in their offensive linemen. It's a position of need, so I just think that makes sense for the Lions at 28. 29 for the Commanders. They need to add to the pass rush. They've added a lot of kind of aging veterans at this point. You've got Deebo Samuel. You trade for Laramie Tunsil. I like some of the moves that they've made, but they are also kind of a little bit of a win-now situation. So James Pierce Jr. does have character concerns. There's just kind of question marks about his character, his work ethic. I don't have a ton of insight into that, but I do think that it could cause him to fall. But based on pure talent, he is incredibly good and one of the better players in this draft. I think Pierce could slide a little bit, and the Commanders could be big-time beneficiaries if he's able to clean up his act. He's a great pass rusher. I thought grew in the running game as well this year, so that's going to be the pick for the Commanders at number 29. At number 30, we have the Bills. Going to go with Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. They did sign Larry Ogunjobi, but he ended up getting suspended for 6 games. That doesn't, completely change what they need on the defensive side of the ball. But, you've got Ed Oliver, Walter Nolan. You've got some other guys in that room. I think that could be a really good disruptive way to get after the passer in a conference that you need to be able to do that with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes and all the guys in this conference. Nolan can provide some really good interior pressure, a great run stuffer as well. So I think that makes sense for the Bills to get tougher on the interior of this defense. I think the Chiefs couldn't be happier with how the board fell here. They'd have their pick between Josh Simmons, Josh Connerly. I'm going to go with Simmons here. I think as long as the medicals check out, which it sounds like they're all positive, Simmons would be the selection. He is just such a smooth mover. I think that, if he had been able to continue playing throughout the entire year, he would be picked much, much higher than this. There's just kind of that little bit of unknown that maybe causes him to slide a little bit. But I think the Chiefs, they desperately need offensive tackle help. Simmons would be a great selection for them at 31. For the Eagles at number 32, really wanted to give them an edge rusher because you'll lose Josh Sweat in free agency to the Cardinals. Brandon Graham retired as well, so definitely they could add to that room, but I just don't think that's where the value is. And decided, they do have, of course, Jalen Carter, you have Davis as well, but I think you could add to the interior after losing Milton Williams. Derek Harmon, somebody who can be really stout against the run, but also provide some really good pass rushing upside as well. Led the nation in pressures in 2024 for defensive tackles, so I think that could be a good fit for the Eagles. They love the trenches as well, so I think that just makes sense. So that is going to do it for my post-free agency 2025 NFL mock draft. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to have tons more NFL draft content, player rankings, scouting reports, all these mock drafts, all that good stuff leading up to the draft. It's just about a month away, so we've got a ton more content coming to you. Please hit that like button. While you're down there, hit the subscribe button as well. Both of those just free and easy ways to support the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I will catch you in the next one.